Liao Sheng and Western Dynasty Early State and Bronze Civilization by Miguel Chavez from the Chinese History Akeo Dawi and Zheng Xing. This PowerPoint will discuss Chapter 2 of it. The key point of the chapter will be discussed in these questions. What the earliest dynasty? What caused them to fall? Were there different religions between them? How did the people live? How was their social class? Why was it a brilliant bronze civilization? These questions will be answered during the following slides. The Jing dynasty was the first dynasty that started in 2070 BC and was first ruled by Yu the Great. This society created the first government, palace, temple, and wall, which would be later used by the next dynasty. The last ruler was King Jing in 1600 BC. The successor of this dynasty was the Shang dynasty, started in 1600 BC and was first ruled by King Ting by overthrowing the King Jing. This dynasty was the first recorded dynasty because they created a writing system in China. They also made bronze industry, horse-drawn carriages, and an efficient military system. They increased the wall by building cities, strong social classes, including the middle class. They also expanded the territory by 30 million square feet. Yet this society, the dynasty fell by the Battle of Mu in 1046 BC by the Xiao dynasty. The Xiao dynasty rose to power in 1046 by overthrowing the Shang dynasty. It was considered the longest lasting dynasty because it was separated by Western and Eastern Xiao. They soon replaced bronze with iron later in their years, but the Western Zhao dynasty fell, and 275 years later. Now, let's discuss how each of the dynasty fall. The first dynasty was the Jing dynasty that fell because of their cruel leader, Jing, who simply didn't care much about his people and abused his power constantly. This led to taxing the people much more, stop protecting them, and treat them poorly and unfair. This caused rebellion to spark, and it was led by Xing Tang, who then rose out to become the first Yang ruler. The Zhang dynasty ended for a religious period by the Zhao, but the Zhao believed the Shang king was evil and heaven no longer wanted them to rule. This caused them, the Zhao, to command more than 800 tribes to defeat them to overthrow their city. Western Zhao fell because the Lord feudalism gained increasing power, and ultimately the king Yu was assassinated and the capital Hojing was sacked in 7070 BC. The capital quickly moved to East Jingzhou near modern-day Luoyang, and the Xiao abandoned the western region. Each of the dynasties had one common thing, worshipping the gods. The Jing dynasty worshipped Earth's rain and river god and pleased the king of the god, the sky god, Qing. The Zhang believed in spiritual control. A world varies from the gods. They worship the supreme god Xingdi and then consult their ancestors with him. They do this by sacrificing themselves to the gods because they believe if they do, they favor them and with luck. The Xiao inherit several aspects of the Shang religion, namely the belief in higher gods, which continue into the Middle Western Xiao. They did not believe establishing a long line of ancestors of the Shang, which regularly worship and encourage them in daily life. Naturally, deity played only a minor role in the Xiao religion, and spiritual, a river, mount, or mountain were not believed in influence political matter. Okay, let's start how the citizens lived. The Jing dynasty was the first dynasty, the primitive society changed to class society and was divided into two things, royalty and peasant. This cannot be proven since there was not enough information about it. The Shang dynasty divided into four classes, the king and the aristocracy, the military, artisan, and craftsmen, and peasants. Members of the artisan were the most respected of the social classes and were responsible for governing small area of the dynasty. Next social class status was the military, both infantry and charity worker. The Shang middle class were the artisan and craftsmen who mainly worked with bronze. The poor class was the peasants, who were mostly farmers. Scholars believe they functioned as slaves. The Xiao classes were different. They divided into three social families, the king, the nobles, and the peasant. Families of each class were expected to show their virtue by offering service to other classes. The nobles got their land from the king. In return, they gave king military support, other services. The political system exchanged land for loyalty and known as feudalism. The peasant worked the noble land and paid them for its use with goods and services. The lives of peasants were full of hardship. Not only did the peasants farm, they also served a Xiao army. In, in return, the noble protect the peasants from enemies of Xiao people. The Bronze Age were brilliant for Shang and Western Xiao than the Jing dynasty. The reason why the Shang and Western Xiao expanded territory beyond the Xiao territory. For example, the Jiang population was 140,000, while the Xiao population increased by 3 million, which caused them to create roads, urban city, and postal service. Also, they expanded on the writing system they created from Jaguan by Oracle bone script that they used on turtle shell to the Jit Win, which is used on vase, copper, and pots, which are now new today in museums. Both of Shang and Xiao bonds were considered most famous. They were not famous for their great number or diverse quality. They were famous for their spectacular shape and superb craftsmanship that is now today. Soon after this, the Bronze Age were considered the greatest time for these people. The next slide will show you what is the type of writing they did. On the left, you see the Jaguan Chinese by the Shang. They look like animals, and they show the few steps on how they became into the Jingwen, where the Western Zhao created. As you see, now they look like more like languages of the Chinese. For this, they will consider the first step to modern civilization in China. This is enough information for the Chapter 2 on Chinese history by Qiu Dawi and Sung Yun.